Welcome back to the Peace Build. My name is Nicholson, and this is a channel where I like to sit in the calmness of nature and talk about things that have unfolded my life and efforts that it will unfold your life as well. If you're just joining me here, I dropped a chapter rather, full of videos, the foundation of how you can build and maintain your peace. If you haven't listened to those yet, I suggest you do, because they all grow on top of each other. So this is the second section of the second chapter of this book. And this one is about solitude, how the profoundness of life is waiting for you in solitude. Most people are afraid of this state, but if you can handle it, it can become the most transformative aspect, timeline of your life. So what does this mean? The state of being alone. And alone doesn't mean lonely. In fact, it comes from the phrase all one. So when you're by yourself, you are all in one. There's nothing missing. There's nowhere for you to go, no one to be. It's just you and the symphony of life. And what happens in this experience if you decide to pass through that threshold of being afraid of exile? You understand that there is another kind of communication going on. If you can hear the environment around me, you can hear that there's other creatures communicating, finding their sense of connection. And with us as human beings and the society where we live, the primary way we communicate is linguistic. Linguistic comes from the word linguia. Linguia means tongue. So most of our communication, we export and import through the tongue. And this is great to organize all kinds of abstractions. But when it comes to living a holistic life, this just isn't enough. Because when you put so much emphasis on the tongue, which is just one organ of your body, you miss out on the entire somatic communication. Somatic comes from the word body. So when you take a break from speaking, from receiving language from other people and putting it out, your nervous system starts to reset and come back to the original setting from which it existed. And what I mean by that is it comes back to the original organ of how it was supposed to function. So this is an organism here, which means it's a collection of organs that work together to sustain life. And everything across the entire existence has the same structure from the minute to the massive. So not only is this an organism here, this is a massive organism around us as well, the Earth. And the only function of an organ is to process its specific vital substance, like the heart processes blood, the lungs process oxygen, and so on. And they all have their own place, their own jurisdiction for which they exist and how they help the whole. But they don't overlap each other. They're very much where they are and nowhere else. If the lungs tried to pump blood and the heart tried to distribute oxygen, we wouldn't be here too long. So just like this, every single human being has their own function as well. They are an organ of the body, the human body, the earth body. So as an example, I have discovered through my solitude that my function is simply emotional clarity. So people come to me with a sense of emotional disturbance, and if they stay long enough through the process, they leave with emotional clarity. I have the ability to tangibly detect and adjust energy, emotion, just as the heart has the ability to tangibly come into contact with blood and pump it throughout the whole body. And this function of you as an organ of the earth is covered when you spend too much time with other people. And this is because every individual, which is someone who can't be divided, they're indivisible, they are like a velocity of energy, of force. And velocity is something that goes in a certain speed in a certain direction. So my velocity brought me here in this specific spot. But there are many people around me who are going in different velocities. And if you spend all your time around people you care about, nothing wrong with that. But if you dedicate your life to the group, you're going to be like a being with their limbs tied to 4 horses that are going different directions. And then eventually you snap. You have a crisis. And this is what comes when you don't face yourself, because there's a lack of integration. So your father might be telling you to do one thing because the velocity of his life brought him to this point. Your significant other might be telling you to do another thing. The teachers in your school telling you to go this way. Your brother's telling you to go this way. But where are you in all this? Where is your ability to function in all this dysfunction? Because what this is going to do is it's going to unnaturally artificially distribute your energy, your thought process, your visions. All of this is going to be not in the right balance. So it will be in disproportion. And then this state of disproportion will produce distortion, a distorted way of seeing, and that will cause eventually destruction because you're out of alignment with the existence. So there is a linguistic reality, there's a verbal reality that dictates lots of people's behavior. But beneath all of that is the existential, energetic reality that will bring you in tune with how life works if you take time to step away from your personality, how you relate to other people. The persona is a mask, something you can take on and off, and you can take it off for a reason. And the reason is simply to expand your consciousness. So when you spend enough time with yourself, you move into a state of convergence, which means you bring everything together, you consolidate it, and then you're able to move in one direction. But if you're jumping from this person to this person to this person to this person, you will notice that you are a little different with each person because there's a sense of cooperation. And this ultimately creates a sense of diversion, which means 2 verses trying to play at the same time. Ultimately, they will go in different directions. And this is like, again, the heart trying to pump oxygen and the lungs trying to pump blood. It just doesn't work. So for me, the only way this channel exists here today, this Peace Build channel, is because I spent an enormous amount of time by myself. In fact, I spend most of my time alone. This isn't because I don't like people. This is just because I have a very sensitive system. I have a porous mind, so whatever comes near my experience, I can sense it. This is part of my gift. So knowing that, the abundance of my life actually comes when I'm out in the open by myself. And ultimately, the clarity of this gave me the structure from within, from inspiration, to build this channel, to share with you. So as I said before, lots of people don't want to abide in this state because of the fear of exile. They think, if I stay alone for too long, then people will forget about me, or I will lose my place in the organism. But this isn't the case, because if you are alone for long enough and you discover what your function is, then you will come back with a undeniably valuable talent that no one will forget. If you can't be replaced, then there's no way you're going to be forgotten. If you are copying other people unconsciously, then you're only going to be a second best of someone else. And this is easily forgotten. So in fact, you actually become less valuable to society the more you are experiencing all these diversions from all over the place. And this is how people become lost. So lots of people, metaphorically or even literally, are in a kind of forest. And this forest can be so thick that you forgot why you walked into it in the first place and you have no idea how to get out. And the first action that needs to be taken when you're lost is not to go forward and wander through the forest. It's actually to climb up the tallest tree that you can see and see the landscape from above. And once you identify the landscape, you identify your destination, then you can decide where to go. You can climb back down the tree, and you can put all your effort into a direction through a reference point. But if you never do this, you'll be going in circles. So solitude, tuning in to that solo tune within this universe, is the way to climb that mountain. Because there is no fixed center of the universe. It is infinitely expanding, which means whatever you focus on, whatever you concentrate on, that can become your center. It's a subjective experience. If you're spending all your time pouring into other people, and they may mean well, but this will put you under the spell that something outside is your center instead of yourself. You and all of us will take the pressure away from being responsible for this one individual by coming into contact with all kinds of people. It has a way of diluting the signal. There's a sense of intoxication that comes from social interaction. If you're really honest with yourself, you can see that it is a drug. It's a mind-altering substance. When you interact with this YouTube channel, your mind is in a certain state. When you interact with your mother, your mind is in another state, your significant other, another state. In a way, we are using each other as a catalyst to experience different parts of ourselves. So you may go to someone because you want to laugh because you know they're funny, or you may go to someone to feel at ease because you know their mind is organized, or you want to go to a party with someone because you know they're exciting. And all of these are just different pieces of yourself that will come out with that kind of company. When you spend enough time within yourself in a state of meditation or a state of simply contemplating your life and how things have gone, you will clearly be able to understand that this humor, this excitement, this wisdom, it all came from within me. It was an organic experience. And the people that I was interacting with at the time, they allowed that to emerge from within. Instead of using art, instead of using an artificial catalyst to experience your joy, your excitement, your humor, you will begin to understand that the producer of everything that you have wanted to experience can be accessed here without any external button. Lots of people are putting their buttons of control and experience outside themselves. But the control panel is within you. So organization of the mind, of the energy, truly can only come from an organic experience. This is why I sit in places like this. You truly can't produce an organized individual with an artificial experience, with an artificial environment. And this is why so many people who live in cities, who frequent jobs that involve them to stare at a computer screen for hours on end, they're experiencing disease. There's a disproportionate amount of energy that is flowing up here and not throughout the whole system. But ultimately, why people do this? Why do we go to jobs? Why do we live in cities? Why do we interact with all these people? It is because we want to experience a state of dissolution. We want the boundaries of who we are to become like nothing. Because in actuality, that's how it is. We are looking for a solution, and a solution just means to dissolve. Solitude is truly the only solution for an individual who is striving to become universal, Because as you go deeper into this somatic experience, as you listen to the bugs and the thunder, and as you feel the grass around you, and there's no one around to comment or have a discussion about what are the intellectual implications of this, life has a way of getting into you to show you what is really here. But it's very gradual. It doesn't happen in moments like a pleasant conversation would. It may take several hours or some days. And the longer you're able to stick with it, the larger your presence becomes because there is no interference. The only thing that's getting in the way of people's well-being is interference of energy. And there's so many ways in which this can manifest, but it's mostly through people putting out signals of negative energy. People who can listen to your desire to grow spiritually, mentally, physically, but because they're not on the same path, they will project their limitations onto you. And having limitations is great, but being straight about what are your limitations and not someone else's is key. Because what you are amazing at, someone else might struggle, and vice versa. This experience of solitude is like stepping into a chasm, a vast chasm. And this is why most people don't want to jump into it. But this is ultimately the point of transformation. Because in this chasm, you will be able to confront your own limitations. You will be very honest about what are my skills, what can I offer, what can I do, what can't I do. And when you're on the edge of your experience and you reach this place where you understand, I am not enough, this personality, the way it is right now, is not enough to continue to where I want to go. You put out a signal, a rope, if you will, that is addressed to the divine, the creator. And this rope, if you keep it out there for long enough, there will be a sense of being adjusted into a being that can get to where you want to go. So this is how you achieve a state of mastery with yourself, first of all, but with anything else you want to do in the world. And mastery is not about improving on the skills that you know in this moment. It's actually about changing your identity into becoming someone new. So it's not enough to continue to sharpen your blade. Eventually, if you want to cut a different material, you have to switch out the blade for something else, a different material altogether. So in solitude, this is what has happened to me. There were lots of talents that I had that I used in the world, but they weren't getting me to where I wanted to go in terms of my growth. And I understood that I was at a threshold. I was in a situation where I felt like I couldn't escape no matter how I was thinking, no matter who I was talking to, no matter the things I was buying, no matter how I would tweak the way I was seeing things that I was already seeing in a certain way but making a slight adjustment. It seemed inescapable. And then eventually I gave up. I said, okay, life has put me in this continual experience of solitude, and I'm just going to submit to this experience. Because people were coming and going, but I was still there. So eventually I went along with it, and it's transformed me into the person I am today, the being I am today. It was like a chasm, like I said, a bottomless pit. Seemed like a bottomless pit. But at the bottom of this pit, I realized that there's a trampoline. So you're falling. Seems like everything's falling apart while you're trying to figure yourself out. And then you bounce all the way at the bottom and you rise all the way up. And I'm still riding this high, which happened to me a year ago. My hair transformed, my voice transformed, the way I exist, how I speak, my delivery on camera, the people in my life, everything has changed around this circumambulation of my solitude. So even when you go to religious experiences, religious spaces, sacred spaces like going to the Kaaba in the Middle East, you will see that the Kaaba is just one Kaaba. There's one cube. There isn't two, there isn't three, there's just one. And they're all circling around that. So in a way, this experience here, the core of who you are is like the same as the Kaaba. And if you are circumambulating, you're revolving your attention, getting closer and closer and closer to that core, eventually you will get there, to that stability where wisdom and peace and innovation, that's where it all comes from. There's no way that we have all these things here today because we made a slight adjustment to what was already here. They emerged, just like every other species on this planet, just like the human being has emerged, just like the universe itself has emerged from nothing. Most of this experience is empty space. Just like the structure of a cell, most of it is empty space. Most of the mind is empty space. So if you fall back into this empty space, you become whole. You are able to use the organ that you have been ignoring, which is ultimately the consciousness. It's not a physical organ, but for me, it's more like a subtle organ that is responsible for the organization of the rest of the system. It's really a beautiful experience. There is a intelligence here that exists that is beyond memory. So all of the situations, social situations that you have operated in that have gone successfully, it's likely because you have used your memory to navigate the situation. And when you're alone and when you're confronted with your limitations, there is a necessity to innovate. And this causes this intelligence that only lives in this moment to come up with something new to get to the next step. And not only does it come out in the moment, it stays with you in every other moment of your life. So in these talks today and in the past, this is always the intelligence I rely on. If you pay close attention to me, you can understand that this is not scripted. I'm very much leaning on my own Kaaba that gives me insight about what to say about this topic. And if I was diverted, if there were other people here giving me suggestions, trying to bend my energy in a certain way, then it would be impossible to do this channel in the way that I do it. There is a certain language that will give you the judgment to truly be yourself. Instead of taking adjustments from ways in which you think, you will be able to take adjustments from the clarity of energy that's flowing through you now. Energy is ultimately very intelligent. It's actually always oriented towards life, because it is life. The mind in linguistics is always oriented towards social situations. So if you fall back from people for a while, and you tune into this current of energy, and you see how much vitality and consistency it has. It makes lots of sense to put your mind in the direction of your life energy instead of the life energy in the direction of your mind, which is always confused. The mind is always confused. If you pay attention to lots of people when they speak, most people, if they open their mouths for long enough, if they speak for 30 minutes at a time, like these videos, they will go in circles. And they'll always get to a point where they don't know what they're talking about. They don't know how they got there. Couldn't get there if they tried again. Because there's no sense of organization, because they haven't stepped away from the identities in which give them comfort to find the function of their own organ, of how they're supposed to exist on this planet, this body. So solitude is not something to be afraid of. It's like a hospital for your soul. Because this is where you have the space, the opportunity to heighten your perception. Ultimately, fear comes from lack of perception. You are scared of something because you can't see what it is. But if you just cranked up your attention, you cranked up your ability to receive what is in front of you because you don't have distractions around you, there's no room for fear. There's no room for extra thinking. There's no room for anxiety. There's just room for you. There's just room for how you function, you yourself. There is a certain tightness of precision that happens to you when you are just alone. Because you have to be. Because solitude is not an easy thing in terms of the emotional maintenance, because there's a sense of withdrawal that comes from not being around people. And this challenge, it requires you to understand the laws of life. The quickest way to become spiritually, psychologically mature is to spend time by yourself, because there's a certain order that you need to abide by to maintain your balance, because you don't have any props to lean on. There's no entertainment to bring you back when you feel upset. There's no guidance from someone else to give to you when you are lost. So you have to figure it out. How the body maintains homeostasis is actually more through negative feedback than positive feedback. So what this means is that when you are very hot, you start sweating. This is the negative feedback that indicates that the body is too hot, so we need to make it colder. We don't need more heat. Lots of people in our culture have perpetuated that the positive feedback is what brings us back to ease. So when we feel a sense of anxiety, we don't use the negative feedback of grounding ourselves, but we look out to the crowd to see what signals do we need to take to move in line with what we believe is the correct movement. If we feel a sense of emotional pain, we want to listen to music that feels emotionally painful, instead of using that as an indicator to come back to the center. So solitude is actually a natural behavior from people who have experienced too many voices in their head. If you have this desire to spend time alone, this isn't because you're weird. This is because the mind and the body are experiencing a negative feedback loop that want to bring you back. And when you're ready, when you feel back in homeostasis, then you can go out with this sense of establishment, because you won't feel a sense of disturbance that your happiness is at stake. Lots of people believe that putting yourself out there in public with a significant other on YouTube or a job interview is a risk, because they don't know how they'll react. But this is only because they are not established within themselves first before they act. And the only way to do this is to be alone in solitude. This is a magical experience, and when you invite room for that magic, it'll come to greet you. So this is all I have here for today. If you found value in this talk, whether it was through the words that I said, the scenery I'm sitting in, the tone of my voice, the energy transmission that came through this video, it means a lot to me that you're still listening. Thank you for joining me here, giving me your attention. If you have the desire to do something like this and you have trouble navigating the experience, I do one-on-one consultations. I would love to speak with you. You can go through the link in my bio. Leave a like, comment, subscription. Really helps with the channel. The people who have joined me this far in terms of their engagement, it really means a lot. Was not expecting this amount of positivity so early in this journey. There's a lot more to come. There are 2 more episodes in this chapter, and from there we will continue with the rest of this book. So once again, my name is Nicholson. Thank you for joining me, and that's all for the Peace Build for today. See you on the next one.